Hello and welcome back, everybody, to the second episode of the In the Clutch podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Cody Roskins, Gavin Russell, Jonathan Michael, also with me here. Guys, how you guys' days been? It's been a wild week 2, I guess it is now.
Yeah, it's been good, Cody, and there's a lot of things going on, a lot of things that we're going to talk about, and we're kind of getting to the thick of the season so far, but a lot of good action.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, first 2 weeks are behind us. Week 3, we got some great games this week, so doing a lot of stuff, getting prepared for that. We have 2 great games on tap at CSM this week, so.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of some of the great games that we had on CSM, this last week, guys, you guys were in Tri-Valley De-Mac. I was at Morton for Morton Richwoods. Give me a quick breakdown of that Tri-Valley De-Mac game. I know it had a couple of production errors just there, internet and whatnot, but overall it sounded like an electric atmosphere.
Yeah, I mean, there were a ton of people at De-Mac. I mean, De-Mac's head coach Cody Myers was, really just hyping up the atmosphere, and it did not disappoint. De-Mac's a great place to watch a game. And it was an amazing, first half. Both teams were just going right back and forth, lots of big plays and everything. And, Tri-Valley just really pulled it out big in the second half. De-Mac couldn't really get much going. You got to credit Tri-Valley's defense. I don't think we talked about that as much as we should have on the broadcast. But Vikings were just real stout on D. They prevented, a lot of, big runs from Brett Dennison of De-Mac, who is, one of the better rushers in the area. So they just really shut him down, and were able to get a couple scores, and that was that. So
yeah, I mean, it was kind of a close game early on, and I think De-Mac's got to be really proud of where they were at, with that game, especially considering, how bad Tri-Valley's beat them in the last couple of meetings. Kind of the big thing was they've met 4 times in the last 15 games. They met twice last year. Tri-Valley's had their number every time there, and for a good reason. They're a very good school. They're a state-ranked program. But De-Mac held their own, and again, I think they're going to continue to get more competitive with them as they play. Tri-Valley just has a little too much firepower. They kind of outlasted them and just kind of took control in the second half. De-Mac really couldn't get much momentum. So Tri-Valley, got to give them a lot of credit, but I think, again, De-Mac's on the up. They've got some younger guys this year, but they definitely showing flashes of potential. I definitely like their chances to definitely get some more wins going forward.
Absolutely. You guys definitely had a great matchup. Again, I was in Morton for Morton Richwoods. John Camosa and I were on the ESPN 101.1, but actually 96.5, just because we had the Illini game going on at the same time on Friday night. But that game was a really weird game. It just had like an eerie feel to it walking into the stadium. It wasn't the same buzz that you had for a typical Morton game in years past, but Richwoods just comes out of nowhere, and after giving up 1 touchdown to Morton on a long play by Carl Whitaker, who had an amazing game, they had a couple running backs that really went off, but they all of a sudden strike on an 85-yard touchdown run from Kyzon Davis, and you think, okay, here we go, we're going to be in store for it. And back and forth they went. Richwoods got up 13-10, and then just all of a sudden, as soon as the second half kicked off, it was 35 unanswered for Morton, and it's like the sky was falling for Richwoods. Like anything that they did well in the first half, it was just counterproductive, the penalties. But on the other hand, Morton just found a rhythm on offense. Jude Hart was slinging the rock up and down the field, and of course their run game's always solid. And I don't know what you guys saw from an outsider's perspective, but from my point of view, it seemed like Morton more so found its rhythm than it did Richwood was imploding.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that, Cody. And I think our 2 games that we both were able to cover were pretty similar in that regard. Close early on, just kind of one team pulling away, just for the sheer fact that the one team found their rhythm more so than the other team imploded. And I think, again, Morton being on the home field, I know there's going to be a lot of talk this year about, Seth Glatz is gone. How are they going to find their rhythm? They're still going to find offense. I mean, it may not be the Seth Glatz type offense that they had last year, and there'll definitely be some holes to fill there as the season goes along. But they will still score points. And, Richwoods proved that they're not necessarily going to be a pushover team the way they competed last week. They'll probably have their ups and downs, and they're kind of in an unfortunate 0-2 right now. And that's why I think that they'll continue to be competitive as the year goes along. Again, just kind of finding that consistency. But Morton definitely showing that they have some firepower. They definitely have enough juice in the tank to make some noise. And I think that Morton will be a little bit of a sleeper team in the Mid-Illini, but definitely going to put up some big numbers on some select weeks throughout the Mid-Illini conference schedule.
Yeah, and I think Morton, it was kind of tough to get an accurate read on them week 1 because they played Muhammad Seymour, who is a state title contender. At least that's what one of our fellow CSM associates, Joey Wright, said about it. He's covering a lot of Champaign area high schools down at the News Gazette, doing some great work down there. But he said Muhammad Seymour is loaded this year. So I mean, obviously, the Bulldogs put a pretty good beatdown of Morton down on week 1. But when Morton plays these other teams like Richwoods and other schools in the Mid-Illini and everything, I think the Potters could be a team to potentially surprise some people. And based off the way you were describing it to me when we both got home on Friday night, Cody, it's not like they, like you said. I mean, the offense was explosive. They have those 3 running backs who I haven't been able to see with my own 2 eyes in a game yet. I saw them in practice a little bit when we went out there preseason, but I think Morton is definitely a team to watch. And I think given by how explosive they were in the second half, I think that they could be a real good team to watch in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. But as I'm sure you viewers saw flash across your screen, we have one of our first special guests joining us in the Clutch podcast. So the first honorary will go to Gabe Zeigler-Harris of East Peoria. And Gavin, I know you two are very close. I'll let you kind of carry this away. But once again, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely, Gabe. Thanks for coming on here. And obviously, it's a big week for you guys picking up that first one. Make sure you get unmuted there. We want to be able to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
But yeah, thanks for coming on, Gabe. We definitely appreciate it. And I mean, we'll kind of jump right into it. You got that first win. I mean, that's pretty historic. First win, 26 games. First win for you ever in high school. So, I mean, just kind of on the surface, like initial feelings, emotions, reactions to that.
It was definitely a really good feeling. It was funny when we got that last defensive stop. I looked at our sideline and I saw everybody jumping around with their arms up, and I don't know, it kind of sent shivers through my body because I never felt anything like that before. And then when we were on offense, our OC called the victory formation. Never heard that before, so it was cool for sure. It was fun.
And no doubt. And I mean, I kind of want to ask because there wasn't like a ton of coverage of that game. It's a game I definitely wish I could have been at, but can't be in multiple places at once, unfortunately. Just kind of take me through the progression of that game. Like, how did it start out in the first half? Kind of start there. Like, what were you guys doing? Kind of timeline of that game.
So basically, at the beginning game, we started off pretty quick. We actually scored 2 touchdowns. It was 12-0, I think, going into the second quarter, I'd say. And then obviously we had a couple mistakes, let them back in the game, and eventually it was 12-12. And then before the half ended, we scored another touchdown to put us up. I think it was 20-12. And then the third and fourth quarter, it was a total fight. It was a really close game. And there was a lot of good plays. Some got called back, but it was really close for that last half for sure.
For sure, I definitely saw that. You finished with a 1-score game. That definitely obviously means it was close the whole way through. You were having a big night, of course. I mean, I saw some of your stats, but if you want to share some of your stats and just kind of some of the plays you made, it sounds like you really were carrying the offense on Friday.
So I believe I had a total of, I think, around 48 carries, and I think I had around 83 yards, something like that. And I had 7 touchdowns, but 2 of them got called back from flags, so I had 5 total. And one of them was a pick 6, actually, but that one got called back.
That's definitely unfortunate.
Wow.
Yeah, Jonathan, go ahead.
Yeah.
I just want to interject, man. 48 carries, that's something you don't see in pretty much hardly any level. I mean, even in high school, that's insane.
It was.
One thing I kind of wanted to ask you, Gabe, was, one thing that I remember when I played, I played basketball in high school, and one of the things I loved the most was the bus ride. So I just want to ask, like, what the atmosphere was like on that bus ride back, man, because, that's, I mean, for me, that's something that I still remember, even years later.
Well, definitely not really much on the bus because we didn't get done till around like 10:30, and everybody was pretty tired, and it's like a 3-hour drive up there and back. But when in the locker room, it was pretty crazy. It was pretty crazy.
No,
that was cool for some.
No doubt. I definitely know you guys were fired up. I mean, was there a big crowd that followed you guys up there? I mean, I definitely know some parents and some fans, but I mean, was the crowd pretty into it?
Yeah, it wasn't that bad for, being 2.5 hours away. I didn't really expect anybody to be there, other than like a couple parents, but they were definitely loud for sure.
It's always good to hear. I got to ask, it's kind of going more on a broader scale here. It's been a rough few years. I mean, I don't have to tell you that. You guys have
Mm.
fought through it. A lot of props to you guys for that. But the job that Coach Jefferson has done, kind of building this back. I mean, just kind of tell me the progression you've seen with this program, like getting better over the few years. Just tell me about that.
I there's definitely a lot more fight in this team this year. Nobody's ever given up. Everybody's always fighting for the next day. Because we're always doubted. We haven't won a game since 2018, so everybody always goes out with a chip on their shoulder, and Coach Jefferson definitely believes that. He believes in us for sure.
No doubt. And then go
Yeah.
ahead, John.
Yeah, sorry for interjecting, Gavin. But Gabe, I was kind of wanted to ask, like, obviously, coming off that win, how do you kind of get ready, I guess, for Limestone now, and like just kind of like how are you guys approaching that game now?
Well, today we had our practice this morning at 8, and Coach just told us, that win was last week. Have fun, and you guys enjoyed it over the weekend, but it's a new week, new team. You got to focus on new goals, and it's just a work week, basically.
For
Sure.
sure. Last thing I got to ask here, of course, definitely looking at Limestone for you guys, but throughout this year, as people, guys, watch you a little bit and follow you a little bit more now, besides yourself, who are some other guys that we, want to watch out for? Who are some guys that, were made that win possible against Aurora that are continuing to be big parts of the team?
Yeah. Definitely big credits to our O-line. They were working all night. I'd say Nathan Nesbitt, Connor Leashite, Andrew Kaufman. He actually took, I think, a 3-year break from football. So this is his first year back in 3 years. Our receiver core is pretty young. The oldest is a junior. His name's Brisson Gore, but him, Jaden Seeley, and Joseph Clark, and we also have a freshman too, Aiden Hinder, and yeah, he's looking pretty good so far.
That's awesome. Well, it's good to hear. I don't know if you guys have any more questions for Gabe. Yeah, awesome. We appreciate you coming on, Gabe. Congratulations on your
Yep.
win. Definitely looking maybe for some big things this week. You guys are going to have a fun battle against Limestone on Friday night. So thanks again, Gabe.
All right, thank you.
Have a good one.
You too.
Thanks,
Yep.
Gabe.
Thanks, Gabe. All right, once again, guys, that was Gabe Zeigler-Harris from East Peoria. Of course, they're fresh off their first win since, 2018, 26-game losing streak at the time, Gavin. I know obviously you've got big EP ties, but that's got to feel good even though you weren't
Yeah,
there.
no, it does. And, they had never won a game the entirety of my high school career being in East Peoria. I've lived in East Peoria and stuff. And I try not to be too biased, Cody, but it's like, I've got definite connections. And when some of
The feel-good story, you got to have ties.
You know some of these guys on the team and guys you've grown up with and stuff. And it's really special to just be able to see them enjoy it so much. And, I know there's so many people that have kind of come and gone, that have transferred away, that have quit playing football. These people and these players that have stayed with it, you got to admire their work ethic and just their grit for staying with it through all the thick and thin. It definitely feels good as a fan.
A lot of thick, not a whole lot of thick.
But it definitely feels good as a fan. Couldn't be there for it, but I was just, super excited to see the score, come across. There wasn't a whole lot of coverage, so I was kind of like anxiously like refreshing my phone the whole night, looking for the score. But it's definitely feeling good for them to get a win. They may have a little potential. They're going to run into some tough teams, but you never know. They might be competitive in a few more games.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Go ahead, John.
And yeah, no, I heard, again, like you said, Gavin, there wasn't a ton of coverage of that game, but from what I heard, it sounded like that game, again, could be wrong, but it sounded like that game came down to, some of the last plays of the game. I think Aurora Central Catholic had a chance, to win it on the last couple plays of the game, and EP hung on. So obviously, that's huge for them, and even just this week, mentally, I think this week for them is got to be big because they're like, hey, we actually beat somebody, and now they have Limestone on the schedule, and there's also a team that's gone through some struggles in the Mid-Illini the last couple of years, and everything. So I expect that to be a really close game, and even though it's probably not a game that's on most people's radars, I think it's a game that's going to be really highly contested, and both teams are going to really want that win. And if East Peoria can win that game, go up to 2-1. They got to feel like they're on top of the world. I mean, obviously, a lot left in the season, but getting 2 wins back to back, man, that is something. So, honestly, really looking forward to the Rockets facing off with the Raiders.
Yeah, they've got a few winnable games left, and Limestone's definitely one of them. It continues to get tougher like each week. Limestone, then you got Canton, then you got Dunlap, so it's going to continue to progress. But the more momentum they can take into those games, the better. And I think that there's always a sense of optimism coming into a season, right? So last year, the year before that. But when you get into the first few weeks and you're not winning any games, you kind of just start to deflate. So now that they're actually have won a game, they've tasted it. Now there's some real momentum, not just some, kind of optimism. There's real momentum, and they're going to just have to try to build on that. He mentioned Coach Jefferson saying it's a new week. We got to come out and play for this week. That's what it's going to be all about. Use the momentum, but play for the week on hand.
Absolutely, guys. Couldn't have put it in any better phrasing myself. But speaking of phrasing, guys, we'll have a new segment for you. We like to call 3 words or less, in which the 3 of us will go down in order, starting with Jonathan, then we'll go to Gavin, then myself. We'll say a 3-word phrase or less that describes one game or team from this last weekend in review. So, Jonathan, we'll go ahead and kick it off with you first.
I'm going to say Centennial, real deal. And this is a team that, again, not really on our radar that much. Obviously, they are in the Big 12. Champaign Centennial is, but they had a huge win against Manual this past week. Winning 69-20 in a game both games that we talked about, Tri-Valley De-Mack and Morton Richwoods, that were close for the first quarter, second quarter as well, and then they just blew away in the second half. And the Chargers have looked really good this year. They had a pretty convincing win over, I believe it was Proviso East in week 1. And and as we saw in week 1, Manual is no pushover this week either, or this year either, rather. And they almost beat P&D. So that was a big win for Centennial, and they have some winnable games on their schedule too. So I think the Chargers are going to be a real sleeper to potentially go 6-3, maybe even 7-2. So I was really impressed with Centennial and their offense this week, and I think we expect big things coming from them this year.
Yeah, no, that's a good take. I like that Centennial one. They definitely turned on the Jets there in that game, scoring some big points. Mine, though, I'm not going to keep harping on it, the entire episode. But East Peoria won. That's my 3 words right there. That's something that hasn't been said. And if you think about it, not to make it sound more sad, but they had not won a game up until Friday. Clutch Morts Media was not even a thing yet. Last time that they had won a game back in 2018. I doubt it was even a thought at that point,
Crazy.
Which is completely crazy to think about. But that tells you how far that they've come. So the only thing I'll add on to the whole East Peoria thing, gotta give a lot of credit to the coaching staff that, obviously changed hands right at the beginning of the pandemic. And I believe they had around 30, maybe even less kids in the entire program going into that spring season. And now in 2 years later, they've, over doubled the size of the program. They brought back the JV and Frosh teams and things like that, which they had to completely scrap a couple of years ago because of the lack of turnout. So they really turned up there. They've added some new coaches, definitely trying to just revamp this whole system. And it's a whole rebuilding process, kind of from the ground up. But I just got to give a lot of credit to the people that have stuck with it and made it work. Again, they're not going to do huge things this year. They're not going to go out and probably make the playoffs. It seems like a long shot, but 2-3 years from now, you continue to get more young talent. You get guys coached the way you want them coached, and more turnout. I think that they definitely have potential to start to be more of a special team in the coming years. But they've come a long way from where they were, and hopefully people can start to see that they're on the uptrend more so than what we've seen in the last few years.
Yeah, those are both really great ones. I'm going to go ahead and kind of flip back to the game that I did this last weekend. And on the script, it's a little different, but I'm going to say pick your poison. And I'm going to be referencing the Morton offense because they've got a couple of guys on that offense that in week 1 really didn't get a chance to shine because they were, again, playing Muhammad Seymour, who is one of the state powers. But when they got a chance to go out against Richwoods, Jude Hart going downhill, you got Michael in the backfield, and also Carl Whitaker, and they've got some weapons on the outside too. Those guys, when they get some space, they are some major athlete. They've got a lot of athleticism out there. I think if you're playing Morton, it's going to be really easy to look like, okay, maybe Pekin's, going to kind of be, the lead dog in this conference. But we hinted on it earlier. You do not want to catch Morton on a bad day. I think that's going to be the trap team this year in the Mid-Illini. They might fall in that same kind of category as Metamora, where if you catch them on your bad day, you might not walk out with a pretty final score because those guys can score in a hurry. All right, guys, welcome back. Sorry for that short intermission. Jonathan had a quick equipment malfunction we've promptly solved. So with that being said, guys, we're going to go ahead and look ahead at our CSM games of the week upcoming. Obviously, the three of us will all be on the calls for the two games. You guys will be in Washington for Metamora Washington, obviously the big rivalry week. And then me and John Camosa will be in Dunlap for Pekin Dunlap, which could be one of the better games in the Mid-Illini, but you guys might have the most eyes on you. What are you guys kind of looking at with Metamora Washington this year?
Well, I think for Washington, I think they're still trying to kind of just establish what that team is. Obviously they've started out with two really tough games against Highland and Kankakee, and I'm excited to see how that they'll play against a team that maybe isn't a favorite to be a state semifinalist, for example. Not saying that Metamora can't, but I definitely think that Kankakee and Highland are both very, very good programs. So Washington, I think it's all going to come down to their offense. They haven't really scored much this year. Since Washington played at Kankakee, I didn't really see much coverage of that game. I think a lot of it's going to depend on what their quarterback situation looks like. I know we talked about that a little bit last week between Jake Stewart and Preston Nelson. But also they also have to be on the lookout to play some pretty good defense, because like you said earlier, Cody, if you catch Metamora on a bad day, they could run it up on them. Caden Hartnett had a really good game last week, even though it was a fairly low scoring dogfight in their win against LaSalle Peru. But I think really if the defense can prevent the Birds from running up the scoreboard, I think that should be enough to at least keep Washington in the game for all four quarters. So that's what I'm watching it for.
Yeah, this is a game that I think on paper you look at Metamora and you think they've got a big upper hand here, because Metamora is 1-1. Of course, they didn't do as good against Peoria High, but that's a really tough week one matchup, especially changing a few hands at some crucial positions like quarterback. But they've definitely proved, playing LaSalle Peru, they've got enough firepower to come out and win some games, and I definitely expect Metamora to be one of the best Mid-Illini teams this year. Washington, again, they haven't really been able to find that footing because you play two brutal opponents. It's hard to really find, with all these new starters and things, how everybody works. If you play, say, a little bit of an easier opponent in the first couple games, then you may be able to find that confidence, find things that work. But again, they have a tough schedule, so they're going to be battle-tested for sure. I would say Metamora probably, again, looks on paper that they have the upper hand, but so not, the Washington people don't all come after me all at once. This is a game I look at all the great rivalries in sports, right? I'll say for a couple Central Illinois ones, Cubs Cardinals, or like Bradley, Illinois State, right? It doesn't matter how good either team is. One team could be so much better than the other. You could throw that out the window. The games are always going to be close. It doesn't matter if one's championship caliber and the other one's rebuilding. They're always close just for that rivalry factor. Washington's going to be buzzing that night. Everybody's going to be there. The student section is going to be awesome. Metamora will bring a big following as well. So I think for that sheer fact, it's going to be close either way. It doesn't matter how good either team's going to play. Just that rivalry factor is going to make this a very close game. Again, it's going to come down to some of the fundamentals. It's going to come down to that consistency. But I do think we're set for a really good rivalry matchup on Friday night.
Yeah, I think some of the things that I noticed when I look at that game, Gavin, is one, they get the home field advantage, which in a lot of cases qualifies for about a touchdown or so. Two, they've got the best student section in the area that's going to have their back for every minute on that clock. And then three, like you said, that rivalry game, it kind of goes back to that same test we gave with Morton. We gave them a free pass against Muhammad Seymour. And when we take a look at Highland and Kankakee, Washington gets that same pass those first 2 weeks because those are two very top-tier teams. And so now this is kind of like the first time we get to see them at their level of competition, who's going to show up, who's not, type of thing. So it's kind of the first real look we've had at Washington. Even though it's week 3, I still feel like you flip a coin on this one because it just doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, each team's coming at each other to knock their blocks off. And so I don't know how you guys kind of view that, but I feel like just because they'll have the Orange Crush, they'll have the home field, this game's going to be a lot closer than a lot of people think.
No, 100% agreed. And it's all goes back to that rivalry factor. It doesn't matter how good they are. Metamora might be the better team, but it's just that energy and that momentum that the crowd can bring. And that's a bold statement, Cody, though. Saying the Washington's the best, I'm sure you're going to have a few student sections maybe hitting you up on Twitter.
Hey.
So, Cody, check out Cody Roskins.
I'm an out-of-stater. Yeah. I'm about as neutral as it gets, but I'm just saying from all the events that I've been to with CSM, the Orange Crush has not disappointed any time I've been. I mean, I'm just saying from experience.
Well, Cody, me and you were in the student section at the
for
TOC.
the TOC, yeah, and they was pretty fun. They welcomed us in with open arms for that game, and they didn't even know. They were like, "Hey guys, we want to get you guys going crazy on camera." And they invited us in to start them off, and it was an awesome experience. But I think the Orange Crush is don't. I'm just saying, crazier things have happened. This is why you play the game.
Mm-hmm.
Jumping ahead, though, we've got another great matchup in the Mid-Illini. And, Jonathan, I know you and I were talking about, which one of us is going to get the privilege of calling this game, but it will get the radio treatment, and it's Pekin at Dunlap in a game that, again, even though it's in Week 3, could decide the Mid-Illini.
Yeah, this is just a huge week for the Mid-Illini because you got the rivalry week, on one side, you got Pekin Dunlap on the other side, and I think at least to this point, Pekin and Dunlap, I think to me have looked like the two strongest teams in the Mid-Illini. Pekin picked up another good win over Belleville East, who's improved since last year. So they're 2-0 now in the year. Dunlap lost again to Galesburg, to Rock Island last week, 27-13, and they couldn't quite get the offense going in that game. That's something that we were talking to head coach Brett Caslett of the Eagles earlier in the season. That's something that he wanted more consistency, out of his offense because he said. That there were times that we looked like one of the best teams in the area last year, and there were other times where we looked like like a JV team or whatever. So it kind of just really depends on which Dunlap team will come out. I do think they have maybe a little bit of an advantage, since they're at home this week, and
they'll get that student section from Pekin on the opposite end of the bleachers, which again, that home field advantage. That's another student section that I guess we got to give them more credit to.
Pekin and Dunlap actually both have great student sections as well.
And so we're going to get the treatment this week.
That's going to be a very rowdy game for sure. So I think it just really comes. I think if Dunlap wants to win that game, I think it's completely on them. I think Dunlap certainly has a talent to beat Pekin. Their defense is usually very stout. So if they can maybe at least contain maybe one of the two between Tyler and Sprecher, I think that would go a long ways. It wouldn't get them all the way, I think, to a win, but I think that would be a very big key is if they can stop maybe just at least one of them. But they're going to have to really do some practice this weekend, bringing down Tanner Sprecher because he is a big man. It's really tough to bring down. That's what I saw week 1. So
yeah, I'm going to kind of jump on John's point there, and I think that you try to slow down Tanner Sprecher and Kanye Tyler, they're still going to hurt you. Like I'm not going to come out and say Dunlap's got to lock it down and give up hardly any points. That just realistically, that's not going to happen. But it's going to start and end with Dunlap's offense. Can they score points with regularity? They have a pretty good offensive line. They returned several really key pieces there. Now, we saw Pekin in week 1, and they definitely showed that they have some force up there up front, Braden Beckham and some other players. But they did have some turnover from last year. So as we get into Mid-Illini play, we'll see how that defensive line can fare. Now, Dunlap holds pretty true with the offensive line. It'll allow Maiden Burke and some of their other offensive weapons to do their thing, but it's about consistency. Can they put up points for 4 quarters? I think if they can do that, or at least an extent of that, them and Pekin will kind of go back and forth. I do expect to see a little more scoring in this game than defense. I'm sure we'll have our fair share of defensive plays, but I do expect to go a little more back and forth on offense. And I think is Dunlap going to be able to keep up with Tanner Sprecher and Kanye Tyler, not necessarily negate them because they're going to get their way, they're going to score points, they're going to get yards, but can they keep up with them and do enough to match them and outlast them at the end?
Yeah, and I think kind of the way I'm viewing this game, because again, I'm calling it so I can't make a pick on it or anything like that, but it always seems like in these bigger games when early in the season when each team knows it's kind of one they really want to have, because especially you don't want to leave it to a tiebreaker later in the year. It seems like it always comes down to turnovers, third down and manageables are always kind of the key factors. And then one other thing I'll hit on just for this game is if Dunlap does have the ball, it doesn't even matter if they score, but they can't, have 1 minute drives and punting the ball back and peeking, getting the ball at their own 30, 35 yard line. Like Dunlap's going to have to take time off the clock, and I think that's the kind of the kryptonite of some of these teams that have really good running backs. Like when we talk about Metamora, who likes to chew up the clock, especially this year with Hartnett and all those guys they've got in the backfield, I think it's kind of the same formula where it's like if they're going to take a long time with the ball, we've ourselves have got to take a long time with the ball. That way, it just shortens the possession amount for each team. So I don't know if we'll have as many points as we think we will, but I think there's going to be a lot of long drives that might not necessarily score. And so if you like defensive football, I think this could be a sleeper. So that being said, guys, I guess we'll go ahead and convert into our final segment, one that I believe sparked some debate in the CSM group chat to a degree. But guys, let's go ahead and recap our 2-minute drill, hot takes and games to watch from last week. Jonathan, we'll start with you, then to Gavin, then to me.
Yeah, so my hot take / game to watch, I'm kind of combining both into one. I'm sticking with the Big 12 as I was earlier. My 3 words or less. I'm going with normal West and normal Community. Crosstown rivalry, 2 perennial playoff teams, and this year, usually Community is the one that's enjoyed the upper hand in the rivalry recently, but this year I got West winning it actually because West it's been a small sample size, but they've beaten Champaign Central and Bloomington, maybe 2 not outstanding teams, but solid teams, which you would expect normal West to do. However, the main thing that has really impressed me is they have not allowed a single point yet this entire season. They beat Centennial 46-0, and they beat Bloomington 42-0, I believe. So their defense has been great. I talked with head coach Nathan Fincham before the season, and he said, we expect our defenders to swarm around the ball at all times. Sounds like they're doing a great job of that. They're going to have to play really good defense this week against Community because they have a potent offense as well. And, Community can still, by all means, win that game. They're still a very good football team. Their only loss is to state-ranked O'Fallon. But I think West beats Community this week.
That's big, John. I definitely, that's a hot take for sure. That's a big game down there in the Twin Cities. I'm going to go circle back to De-Mac here. I think that, De-Mac's kind of had a tough first couple of weeks as well. They're playing some state-ranked programs. Tri-Valley, again, has had their number. And it was just a tough week for the Chiefs. But they have another big game this week against Ottawa Marquette. Marquette is 2-0 entering the week 3. So on paper, it would look like De-Mac might be the underdog here. But I think De-Mac's actually played pretty well, all things considered. We didn't see it so much in this last week against Tri-Valley, but Brent Denniston is going to get his. He's definitely a really solid running back. And I think Lucas Blumeyer really showed off his potential and his ability in the game against Tri-Valley. I definitely think Marquette's going to be a little bit of an easier opponent. So if De-Mac can kind of come out and play with the same ferocity that they did last week, I think it's going to put them in a good position for a win. I'm going to go with De-Mac this week to get a big win over Marquette, and I think it really could jumpstart the Chiefs season. Chiefs team that I'm pretty confident will end up getting back, and even if they kind of sneak into the playoffs at maybe 5-4, 6-3, I fully expect to see the Chiefs playing some playoff football.
Great picks, guys. Great picks. For my hot take, because I did a game to watch last week, which was Farmington versus Havana, which I was right on. That was a roll for Farmington. That was a no contest, stop the count, throw in the white towel. But for this week, I'm going to stick with the rivalry week theme. Going to go back to Metamora, Washington, and neither team to this point in the season has scored more than 16 points. The game against Peoria for Metamora was called 34-16 in the second quarter. Last week, Metamora won 16-8 against LP. Washington hasn't scored above 16 all season. I think this week both teams will put up over 20, and I think it'll still be a one-score game by the end of the game. So both teams some teams, struggling with some offense. I think this is the week they're going to unload the playbook and let that rock fly around the field a little bit.
Plenty of action for sure. And again, I don't even know what to fully expect with Washington's offense. I think we'll kind of feel that out as the week goes along, as we kind of dive into them a little bit more, hopefully talk with maybe some of their coaches and stuff. But I fully expect there to be some fireworks, and that's awesome. I love lots of action and good football game, and that's what I fully expect on Friday night. It's definitely one that our folks are not going to want to miss. Metamora, Washington is always fun.
Absolutely, guys.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, John. You got something else to add?
I was gonna say, man, I'm so pumped, for this week 3. Obviously, I was real pumped for week 1, first week of the season. Week 2 was also a good week as well, but week 3 I've been looking at for a while. I mean, this is where the tires hit the pavement. I mean, because conference play is starting up in the Mid-Illini. Stuff is really gonna start to shake out. We're gonna see some great football. Both in our video broadcast and our audio broadcast this week. I think a lot of stuff can be decided here in these early couple weeks. Or at the very least, it'll kind of show the directions of where things are headed, at least in the high school football landscape here in Central Illinois, and not just in the Mid-Illini too, and also the Big 12, Heart of Illinois, other conferences as well. So I think this is where stuff really starts to kind of hit the fan a little bit. So it's gonna be an awesome week. So if you whatever game you're interested in going to this week, definitely get out there. So it's going to be great football all across the area.
Here at CSM, we're throwing the Mid-Illini into the pressure cooker. So we'll see what shakes out, who rises, who sinks. But for this episode of the Clutch Podcast, once again, Jonathan, Michael, Gavin Russell, I've been Cody Roscoe. We'll be right back next week, same place, same time.